Big labor making a big push this Labor Day for $15 an hour minimum wage for everybody. But some business groups are making a big push to fight back. Take a look at this billboard in Times Square, New York City. It reads, "What? I get 30 grand a year with no experience or skills? Who needs an education or hard work when we're raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour? Is the sign right?" Here's what some Americans had to say.
Why should I guess, go to school, spend like 50, 60 grand on a college education when I can just work and make the same amount of money?
They need to make more money.
The cost of living is different in every state. So I think it's, as it's always been, a state thing that should be determined.
Some people are struggling, and they just need that extra help.
The small business owners, like my wife here, would have to let some people go if $15 an hour, that's a crazy minimum wage.
All right, Jonathan, we just heard Americans sounding off about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. What say you?
Well, Eric, prices are not arbitrary. Prices for food, prices for housing, prices for stocks, and prices for labor, wages. I mean, they're not based on whim. They're not based on feeling. They're not pulled out of a hat. They're actually based on economic reality. And the Labor Department knew this, 80 years ago. The higher you raise the minimum wage, the more jobs, particularly low-skilled jobs, you destroy. And what does that do? That discriminates against people just getting in the workforce. It kills their self-esteem. It kills their ability to build those skills to move higher up the economic ladder, and that's the result of a minimum wage.
You know, Juan, we spent some time in Times Square, and there were, frankly, people on both sides of the argument, but every time the people who were in favor of raising the minimum wage, I'm standing in Times Square, I point to a Burger King, a McDonald's, or an Urban Outfitters, and I said, what if your burger goes up, or the school, your kids are going back to school, what about the prices of their clothes going up? And they said, well, I really don't want that to happen. Someone's got to pay.
Indeed. By the way, did you pay for that billboard, or did the big business across America that's fighting this pay for that billboard? But you know what I would say? Hey, look, you forget. I mean, if you're going to, sometimes if you're out in the middle of the night, 4 a.m., you see these little old ladies, at the bus shelters. They're going to work, Eric, and they don't get much money, and they have to come home and feed people. Those are people who deserve, in my opinion, to have a very basic minimum wage. It can vary from area to area. But the fact is that we have a country. I don't think they get hurt at all. In fact, yes. I think I think that when you're talking about, Jonathan, hurting entry-level workers, remember, more and more of the people who get minimum wage now, the majority are in fact middle-aged people. They're middle career. They're just not making money.
We know it's ridiculous that we have to argue this. We know what happens when you raise the minimum wage. Businesses respond by cutting jobs, by cutting hours, and who it ends up hurting is the little old lady that you're talking about. Because if you're a business owner, you're not going to have the little old lady. You're going to get the person who has a master's degree and has a better resume and
a master's degree flipping burgers, Michelle. Times aren't really
that tough.
The
point is that if you have to pay someone $15 an hour, you're not going to have the low-skilled worker. What is the point?
Go ahead.
The point is, and Jonathan brought up something, I think a really good point, which is we don't invent these numbers out of anywhere, and that's the problem with the $15 minimum wage. That would be such an astronomical jump. But we do know, economists have said, cities have tried it out, that if we go to $10 or $12 an hour, that this actually won't hurt jobs. It won't hurt employment. 3 out of 5 small business owners favor this. 70% of Americans.
I got to get Wayne in here. Wayne, one thought about this. We talked about cops in the last block. Sometimes a cop starts at 30 grand a year. You want your cop on the street protecting you. Meanwhile, the guy flipping a burger is going to make 30.
No, Eric, it's a simple thing. In the free market system, you bargain for things. You bargain for food. You bargain for housing. You bargain for labor. The same way. A guy who is operating a numerically controlled machine with a computer is not going to get the same wage that a guy is who's sweeping up the floor. You just can't afford it. So you can't equalize everybody. It just doesn't happen. You're paid by a skill level, and that skill level demands a certain pay.
And that is the lesson number 1 in free marketing, and you're 100% right, Juan. Wayne, we're going to leave it right there. Coming up, PC professors at a public university threatening students with bad grades for using terms like illegals or male and female. Time for taxpayers to teach them a costly lesson.